Welcome to the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. We don't shy away and keep secrets here. We empower you with education, telling you the truth about all things aesthetic medicine while encouraging you to be the best version of yourself. It's time to look great and feel good doing it. This is your host, mom, speaker, and board-certified physician, Dr. Judith Borger.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 23 of the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. Today, it is my pleasure to have a guest with me that I have admired, followed, and listened to her podcast for years. And this special guest is Dr. Alexandra Stockwell. Dr. Stockwell is also known as the Intimacy Doctor or the Intimate Marriage Doctor. And she is a relationship and intimacy coach and an intimate marriage expert. She is a best-selling author. Her book is called Uncompromising Intimacy, and she is the host of the Intimate Marriage Podcast and the creator of the Aligned and Hot Marriage Program. She has been featured in Huffington Post, Rolling Stone, USA Today, Cosmopolitan, Fox News, Business Insider, and many, many more. She was named recently as one of the 30 inspiring women to watch in 2022. So this is a coach, a podcaster, and a female physician that I have admired for years. And I'm so excited that she will be my guest today. We are going to talk about feeling beautiful. And I think it's just such an important conversation to have. I talk a lot about aesthetic procedures and how to make yourself look better. And so the flip side of looking better is really feeling better. So, because I think that's what most people want, right? They want to look better, but ultimately they want to feel better. They want to look beautiful. They want to feel beautiful. So in today's episode and our conversation, we're going to talk about all sort of things between really what's the difference between feeling beautiful and looking beautiful. How do you feel beautiful? What makes you feel beautiful? And then I'm sure we'll talk about effects on relationship and life, and we'll just see where this conversation will take us. It is such an honor for me to have her on the podcast, and I hope you enjoy our conversation as the Aesthetic Doctor welcomes Dr. Alexandra Stockwell. I am so excited to have Dr. Stockwell here with us today. And she is a coach that really coaches on intimacy, on relationships. And today, I think it's a really important conversation to have about inner beauty and outer beauty and how really all of aesthetic medicine and wellness and how you feel go together. So Dr. Stockwell, in your experience, what really makes people feel beautiful?
I love the question, and maybe before I answer that, I'll just talk about the difference between looking beautiful and feeling beautiful. And I think it's very easy to confuse the two when they're actually completely different experiences.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to even make my question better. So thank you.
Yeah, I was actually talking with my personal trainer this morning, and I knew when she had gotten a facelift and how happy she was afterwards, and it really was amazing. I, as a physician, am familiar with facelifts and assisted on them, but I don't have somebody that I see, I don't see my trainer every day, but very often, who then has a facelift, and it's totally clear when it happened. And it was amazing to see how much better she felt, how much better she looked. It really was phenomenal. But the thing that we were talking about this morning, and I was telling her I was going to be talking with you and how exciting that was, is how important it is to have how you feel inside match up with how you look inside. So in her case, as someone who's a personal trainer, who's done all kinds of therapy and coaching and really worked on her thoughts so that they are supportive and aligned with who she wants to be, she felt great on the inside. And so she chose to have some procedures so that she would look similarly, feel aligned when she looked in the mirror. But I also think there's a really common phenomenon of particularly women, but also men, who have procedures to enhance how they look, but then the misalignment is on how they feel because they still don't feel beautiful inside, even if in the photographs things are where they would want them to be. Does that resonate for
I
you in
I,
your
lo- I
practice?
love that answer and that conversation because I think it's something that I've, articulated throughout the podcast as well, and as my goal is because the goal of aesthetic medicine is really to allow your vibrant and maybe young and full of life outside to match how you feel on the inside. And I see that a lot that, a lot of the women that first came to me are like, I look tired, I look this, and that's not who I am. And so they want to get Botox done or fillers or whatever, so that, just like you said, that the outside of them looks as young and vibrant and full of life. And, with lip filler, a lot of times it's about sexiness and lusciousness as they feel when they're like, no, I have old people lips, like, right? I don't feel like that. But I think, like you said, the people who have the work done on the outside to sort of mask maybe how they feel on the inside, or have this
To
fallacy that,
compensate for it.
right, to have this fallacy in thinking where they think, well, if only I would look like this, I would feel so much better. I think those are the people that tend to be unhappy more often with the results of their procedures, simply because
It doesn't address the thing
it
they
doesn't
want
address
because
it.
it's the wrong way to address it. In fact, because we were having this conversation, it was like I was sweating and lifting weights and preparing for this interview all at once. And she was telling me about this client she had years ago who had many procedures and actually injected her own lips. I didn't really know that was a thing, but anyway, she had lots of different procedures, but when training, my my own trainer would say, okay, look in the mirror. There are times with lifting in certain ways or doing lunges or whatever, and she'll say, look in the mirror so that your eyes are at a certain level and it impacts posture and so forth. And this woman wouldn't look at herself in the mirror. She would always look down. So she had all of these procedures and in many ways was magazine cover like, but looking in the mirror was incredibly uncomfortable. And the reason that I'm saying this is that there's no procedure that is going to have her feel good looking in the mirror. That is a very different kind of transformation than the one that happens pharmaceutically or surgically. And so I think that's our conversation, is how to really pair the internal transformation so that it keeps pace, at a minimum, keeps pace with the physical external transformation. And if someone is outpaced either internally, then yes, they might like to have procedures to get the outside to match, like you said. And if their external appearance outpaces how you feel inside, then really the next best investment of time and attention is on how you feel, because that's actually going to get you the goal more effectively.
Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree. It's the thoughts inside of your brain that make you feel a certain way, the thoughts you have about yourself. And then, yes, absolutely, we can help with all sorts of things to
Yeah,
have your outside match. But you're right, whether you feel beautiful actually has very little to do with your outside.
exactly. Because you can look beautiful to other people, but if you don't actually feel beautiful, then you're still caught in that trap of feeling misaligned, out of resonance with yourself. And I think, I mean, I can't really imagine that there's any woman, certainly in the West, but really throughout the world, who hasn't had some phases of mismatch in what it looks like, what she looks like, and how she feels inside. So this is this isn't specifically spoken about in the culture that much, but dialing in, like dialing in the internal experience and the external appearance is something that we all navigate. We navigate it by ignoring it, we navigate it by overcompensating, or we navigate it with intentionality, understanding that our internal experience needs to at least keep pace with any kind of beautiful external appearance.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, with that being said, what are some of the ways that people can feel more beautiful on the inside?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. And actually, I'm going to have fun telling you that in my work as an intimate marriage expert, the place where this tension, I'll call it, this dynamic tension arises, one of the places is when it comes to physical erotic intimacy, because just as we can think, well, if I get this procedure, I'll feel beautiful, we also can think, if only my lover were more skillful, if only my spouse knew how to touch me more, then I would have the kind of experience I want to be having in the bedroom. And I'm all for our spouses, lovers, sexual partners becoming more skillful. That is an ongoing, beautiful element in life. But the most skillful sexual partner is not enough to really enjoy oneself in the bedroom, to really feel gratified and erotically expanded and tender and luscious. So it's a completely different scenario, but it's the same dynamic tension, because in both cases, to walk by a mirror or walk down the street and feel beautiful is largely, or at least significantly, an inside job, and really having a wonderful experience in the bedroom and feeling erotically alive and gratified, that is also largely, not entirely, of course, but largely an inside experience, an inside opportunity as well.
Yeah, I mean, in coaching, we always talk about sort of what happens as a neutral circumstance, and then that we really can't change a lot of times, or let's say that for the simplicity of the models, we assume we can't change. And then really our reactions, our thoughts, our feelings are the things that we then control and that we can change and that we can work on. With what you said, what that made me think about was sort of my next question. You work a lot with both individuals and couples as an intimate marriage expert. And one of the questions I think that arises with what you said is, can you make somebody else feel beautiful, or does it always come from within? Because I think sometimes when I hear that, I automatically think about the woman a lot of times that tells me, well, my husband says I'm beautiful no matter what, but I just don't feel that way. Or, the other way around, I'm sure.
Yeah. So it's really interesting what you say, and it gets back to the question that I kind of sidestepped, not meaning to sidestep it, but, how does a woman feel more beautiful? And certainly external response, especially from a husband or someone that you care about, is lovely. It's really lovely. But the key is to be able to actually receive it, to actually feel it, to actually believe it. So in my work, I'm of course very familiar with the coaching model that you've described, where the beginning and end of our experiences is with our thoughts. And there are many times when I use that approach. But when it comes to sensuality and feeling beautiful, I often start with the feelings. So if, let's just say, it's easier to be more specific. Let's say I'm coaching a woman and she doesn't feel beautiful, and her husband says, "But you're so beautiful, honey." And which is a wonderful privilege to, like, that's a great kind of relationship to have. And so what I would say to her is, like if we use the thought model, we could walk her through, well, is there any way that that could be true, and kind of intellectually convince her. But when it comes to sensuality and feeling beautiful, I really want a woman to be able to have that experience from the inside out. So I might have her just close her eyes and imagine, if you believed you were beautiful, how would you feel? What would be arising inside you? You don't have to believe it, but if you believed you were beautiful, just close your eyes a moment. Picture how you would feel when you wake up in the morning, how you would feel as you're going about your professional responsibilities, how you would feel as you take your makeup off in the evening. Like, if you felt beautiful, if you believed you were beautiful, how would you feel? And if she can access something, then that's the opening that I care about. And I'm going to ask her, depending on if she's a disciplined person, I might say, okay, put an alarm in your phone, and 3 times a day, just take a moment. You can do it privately, it doesn't need to be dramatic. And just close your eyes and imagine you feel beautiful. Because any kind of feeling like this, we just need to make friends with it. It's like trying a new food. It's unfamiliar at first. And then, in fact, there's such interesting research. I don't know if you would have reason to have come across it, but I think, Mexican children are not born liking jalapeno peppers. It takes, I think, 20 exposures before they like it. And that is true of so many different things in life, that it's familiarity that makes it real. And so a woman who's in the situation we're talking about, who doesn't feel beautiful, she is very familiar with how it feels not to feel beautiful, with the thoughts that she's thinking, with the interactions, with the posture she has, with all of the different expressions of an identity of not feeling beautiful, despite looking impeccably dressed and having her procedures done on schedule. So the goal is for her to become familiar with what it does feel like to be beautiful, what it does feel like to have a little more internal ease about appearance. And then that can be titrated up. It's actually kind of phenomenal how just tapping into that energy on a regular basis, it will start oozing into the whole day. So that's one tip.
I love that. I absolutely love that more embodied approach, and really allowing your whole body to feel it. And especially when you talk about carrying it over into sensuality, because it really impacts not just your thoughts, but every way you show up. And as you were talking me through that scenario, I could in my mind already see somebody going through their day in a more confident way and interacting differently with whoever she comes across. So it is really that ripple effect, right? And how you feel to what you then send out in the world. And then interestingly, that it comes back to you, right? In that same way.
It really does come back. And again, in anticipating our conversation, I was remembering my mother, who, when I was a teenager and started spending a lot of time in front of the mirror, I never wore a lot of makeup, so I don't actually have any idea what it was that I was doing in front of the mirror, but I spent a lot of time in front of the mirror looking at myself. And my mother used to say, that's not accurate, because how you appear to someone is connected with the expression on your face and what's in your eyes when you actually see that person. And if you're looking in the mirror, the only person you're ever seeing is you. So you have no idea what this guy is going to actually see, or, what your teachers see, or whatever. Like, of course, it's the same color hair, like all of the measurable elements are the same, but it's true, like the vibe, the facial expression, like whether or not I'm open is going to depend on who it is that I'm interacting with. And that's not really something that can be surgically adjusted or even really appreciated when I look in the mirror myself. And so I think how we feel very much influences people's experience of how we look.
Yes, absolutely. And, that also made me think about the aging process. A lot of times when people come to my office, the reason they do is because they feel aging. And like we said, there is just, I don't know if it's a noticing of it or panic about it. It kind of probably depends on the person and the situation.
And
But
how they've, like, what kind of social capital they've had, like how their appearance and youthfulness has benefited them in their life.
And I think that's one of the things that I love about you and your podcast is that it just seems like it's so applicable to no matter who you are and no matter where you are in life and in relationship. And I think especially your maturity and your experience really, I think, gives people incredible hope that, it is everything is yet to be looked forward to, and that aging can be amazing and that your relationship can stay intimate and improve. And when you talk about how your relationship has shifted over the years, so this is probably a little bit of a vague train of thought, but
It's okay, I'm inspired.
yes, one of what are some of the thoughts that you have on aging and beauty? And I don't mean aging in terms of like, I mean, whatever, because even, I'm in my 40s. So even I obviously have noticed that my body and my mind has changed from my 20s, my 30s, having children, all of that. But I tell everybody, like, my 40s are amazing. Like, it's been the best decades yet. And in a way, I think it does give those behind me a little bit of hope, because a lot of people are like, oh my God, the big 4-0. And then I'm sure people are like, oh my God, the big 5-0. And then, and the big 6-0, I'm sure everything is over. Like, right. And I think one of the things that we also are here to do is to change the conversation. I mean, we're both women, and we obviously both identify as like cis hetero women, but just that idea that aging and beauty can be sort of this ongoing, ever changing, like magical, beautiful experience.
Yeah, okay, I love this. I have so many different things to say. So what you're pointing to is a lot of our societal messaging and conditioning, and also the modeling of generations before us. And so to be really concrete of about how this plays out when it comes to intimacy, 50% of women 50 and older aren't having sex anymore. However, women sexually peak in their 60s and 70s. And one of my podcasts, I don't know if you listened to it, but I interviewed a couple that have been married for 51 years, and she talks about having the best orgasms of her life. And I have this couple in my Facebook group. They've been married for 53 years. She said they've always had a strong sexual relationship, but 4 years ago, they've had a sexual awakening and things are unbelievably incredible now. I myself have been married for 26 years and I'm 54, so I only have a few years of contributing to the still having sex statistic. But what I want to say with that is so much more is possible. But if you don't choose it, if you don't create it for yourself, then yes, things really can go downhill. That's what is happening in bedrooms across the country. So one really important thing to add to this conversation is the importance of role models. It's exactly what you were saying, that you give people hope. And we're so used to thinking about learning things with our prefrontal cortex, with our smart brains, and that definitely is true when it comes to learning calculus or, I don't know, medication dosing or what, many different things. We need our prefrontal cortex. I'm a fan of my prefrontal cortex. However, when it comes to relationships, we are like other mammals and largely learn through imitation. And so we do need more loud and proud and generous older women talking about how delicious life becomes. There's a way in which, for any woman who's been pregnant, you may connect with how freeing it is to have a, I mean, not, I don't know that all women feel this way, but I did, and many do, that, it's like you can relax about having a belly, because of course you have a belly because you're pregnant, and there's just a certain pressure that falls away. And I think ideally, as we age, there's something similar that happens, that there's no benefit to me at 54 trying to look like I'm 30. That is just a recipe for hitting my head against a wall. So what am I going to enjoy? What am I going to put my attention on so that I plan to live a long time? How is it going to be wonderful? And these are all things that are possible. On the one hand, our conversation is more general, but I'm also intentional in that, because that's the context that needs to be embraced in order to make anything specific work. Even what I described about taking time each day to really see what it feels like to feel beautiful, that only makes sense in the context of what we've just talked about.
And I think, when we talk about aging, one of the things that I sort of also tell my patient, or I try to model, is that there's a certain amount of embracing it that absolutely needs to happen. And that is that same kind of circling back to that comment about, or the beginning of our conversations about feeling beautiful.
Yes.
That I am sort of looking at this current version of me in my 40s, and within that version, I'm trying to be my most expanded, free, authentic, true to myself, and at the same time looking as good as I can. But I'm not, like you said, you're not trying to look 30. I'm not trying to look 25, like, right? So it's that same thing. I'm trying to look the best at my current version. And you know what? There's going to be a couple of crow's feet there, and that's okay. Am I ready for the forehead wrinkles or the this and that yet? No, I'm not ready for that yet. But there's a couple things that I'm like, yeah, I am this age, and I'm not trying to not look that age. I'm just trying to look like my best version at my current age. Like I'm trying to live my best life at that current age, and trying to feel my most beautiful and my best at my current age.
I love how you said that, because I also would never want to be 25 again. I wouldn't mind looking 25, but I would not want to be 25. And you don't get to be 25. You don't get to look 25 unless you are 25 for the most part. And, this also brings up something that I often point out, because we do expect to grow and mature in many areas of our life. We want to progress financially. We want to progress with our career, with our home. Like there's so many elements of life where we just understand that it's going to evolve and change. And we really do ourselves a disservice if we want our look at 25 or 30 to be our look throughout our lives. And also, if we are looking for our sexual experiences to be what they were in the younger years. I mean, sex at 54 is not the same as sex at 25. And I am totally, totally good with that. Sure, in my 20s, maybe it was more calisthenic or more, exotic in certain ways. But with maturity comes nuance and depth and a capacity to feel things that really enhances the whole experience. I feel like one of the most important things, and this is indirectly related to feeling beautiful, is that with more youthfulness, we tend to be more focused on the other person's experience. And I think one of the things that makes sensual and sexual experiences so rich with maturity is we learn to really focus on and savor our own experiences. And that enhances both people's experiences tremendously.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's quickly talk about how people can learn more about all the wonderful things you said. I have subscribed to your podcast for a couple of years now, and I love your podcast. It's really one of the ones I never miss an episode. So
I
that's why
love hearing
it's
that.
such
Thank
a
you.
honor for you to be here. So tell our listeners exactly how they can find you, what your podcast is, and then also if you, I know you have a bunch of offerings, and I don't want to go into the specific sales, but I know you do groups, you have evergreen courses, you do individual coaching. So just run through that, because I'm sure, like we had talked in the pre-show, this is a taking this conversation into a conversation I really want the podcast to go about, not just this is the procedure for why, but how can you have your whole life be most beautiful and most authentic. And so I'm sure we've piqued a lot of people's interests.
Okay, well, thank you for so much graciousness. So, alexandrastockwell.com is my website, and that really is the entryway to everything. You can find links to my social media to follow me there. My podcast called the Intimate Marriage Podcast, where I share my own teachings and I interview couples with fantastic relationships. And so it's largely spontaneous conversations just like this one on the topics of emotional, sensual intimacy in long lasting relationships. My book, Uncompromising Intimacy, you can also find that through the website. And I have a variety of programs, a lot of independent study programs. In fact, someone listening, if this all feels kind of new territory, you might just enjoy my independent study program, Desires Awaken the Woman Within, because it all starts with what you want. It's just $49. It's meant to be totally accessible for any woman who wants to be more in touch with what she actually wants. And then I have programs for couples, group coaching programs, private coaching, but all of that is on the website. Alexandra
Awesome. And we
Stockwell.
will obviously put everything in the show notes. So you can also go through the show notes, and there will be links to all of Alexandra's things. So in terms of sort of really going back to the original question, what makes people feel most beautiful? I would love it, before we go, if you would just leave us sort of with some of your best tips and tricks. We've already talked about just imagining feeling beautiful. What other concrete tips could you share with our listeners?
One of the most important things to feeling beautiful is being able to enjoy yourself. There is very little more beautiful than a woman who is truly enjoying herself, whether she's drinking coffee alone in a cafe, whether she's hosting a party, whether she's at a ball, whatever the situation is, a woman who can enjoy herself is going to be beautiful. So the real tip there is, if you don't already know, start journaling or otherwise daydreaming, or discover what has you really enjoy yourself. That's one tip. Another is often the difference between feeling beautiful and not feeling beautiful can change very quickly. I think we all probably know that feeling of feeling good, and then you walk into a room and maybe you see what another woman is wearing, or you overhear a comment, and then all that good feeling that you've had for a few hours as you get ready and anticipate the event, it just drops right out of you. It just leaves quickly. Well, what I want to say is the feeling of being beautiful and in the right place at the right time in the right way, that can arise just as quickly if you practice doing it. It's no different than going to the gym and building muscles. You just need to become familiar with evoking that feeling. And I highly recommend practicing when you're not in a stressful situation so that you can tap into it when you are. I guess one other thing that I would say is that insofar as feeling beautiful is really a holistic experience, and appearance is one very important element, so is your tone of voice, whether or not you're making eye contact, the kind of attention that you're putting on the person or people you're with, and how responsive you are to any attention you're receiving from them. There are all these variables that make feeling beautiful and being perceived as beautiful a much more holistic experience than we usually talk about. So I think I'd probably leave it right there. What do you think?
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much again for being here with us today. I really, really appreciate it. And for everybody who's listening, I hope you enjoyed this little turn into the inner world of feeling beautiful with Dr. Stockwell. And thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Aesthetic Doctor podcast with Dr. Judith Borger. We'd love to connect with you outside of the show. Follow Dr. Borger on Instagram at Dr. Borger and find more online and ways to work with Dr. Borger at www.theaestheticdoctor.com. Until next time, be well.